it's one thing to already have relationships with people and then not see them and only work from afar. It's a different thing to start in an entirely new organization like that. So it's something that you just continue to work on and find best practices and talk to other people and keep learning, which is what we do in attractions all the time. We always adapt and learn. Things always change in our industry.
Tap into innovation at IAAPA Expo, the biggest industry event of the year.
Join us and other attraction pros in Orlando, Florida, November 18th to the 22nd to engage with the global community.
Learn from the experts, leave with new ideas, and turn your passion for the industry into new possibilities.
Register now using the link in the show notes to save up to 30%.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing great. How are you?
I am fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah.
It was a little, for those not watching on YouTube, there was a bit of a head spin, or maybe it kind of looked like a plane's tailspin, sort of.
Maybe a little, yeah. I didn't know what that might do to the audio of it, but probably nothing. So I have a question for you.
All right.
Have you ever wanted to see what it's like or feel what it's like to live within the world of maybe your favorite TV show or movie? Like to live within that world. Have you ever wondered what that would be like?
No.
Well, this is going to be a short episode.
No, I'm just kidding. Yes, I think that to some extent, I think a lot of us get excited by the mostly maybe fictional stories that we get to see, whether we're reading them in books, watching them on TV, or seeing them in movies, and being able to step into that world and being maybe not necessarily being a character as we know it that we see it, but being ourselves as a character in that world.
Okay. Very nice.
That's
That does. It does. Well, and I think it goes along with what we're talking about today, because certainly at theme parks, we talk about stepping into certain worlds, right? And maybe it's a movie or a TV show and things like that. But today, our guest, Nick Miller, gets to talk to us about how he does this with certain TV shows and movies that aren't necessarily part of a theme park, but a standalone operation or experience. So Nick Miller is the director of guest experience for Original X Productions, and he works with brands like Friends and Harry Potter to really create an immersive experience where people can maybe feel like they're on the set of Friends, or be in the world of Friends, I should say, or be in the world of Harry Potter.
You know what's interesting? This just crossed my mind here because we talked a lot about those two particular IPs, Friends and Harry Potter, which are both very different types of IP. And if we're talking about stepping into those worlds, we're talking about stepping into a wizarding world where there's magic and there's a castle and there's spells and there's broomsticks and all of that, or they're stepping into a New York City apartment and coffee shop, which we never really in the interview we never really saw that as actually being different, because it is an intellectual property. It's a branded experience. It's something that we have all come to know and love, and stepping into those where we could feel like, oh, I'm just another New Yorker here, or I'm a wizard in the wizarding world. I feel like probably hits the same part of the brain. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think some of that goes back to your understanding and care for and desire to be part of that world. Like there might be some people who are very excited to sit on the couch at Central Perk, but could care less about going to Gringotts, right? And maybe vice versa. Exactly. But where my mind went in that conversation with what you're talking about is the intellectuals and the people with the skills and the talents that put on those experiences. Do they look at a friend's experience any differently than they do a Harry Potter? Or is it, hey, we've got the story, here's our treatment, here's the set, what it's supposed to look like, here's what we want our team members to say. Like there's those elements that are identical in the creation and the execution of that experience, but they're very different from an IP or a story driven perspective. That's where my mind went.
Yeah, it's like the bones are the same, and
Yeah.
then kind of the facade, everything that surrounds it matches what that experience would be if you were to walk into that world. We could probably just talk about this for another hour, but let's talk about, like you said, Nick Miller. You teed him up here. You set it up for. He was just such a fascinating person. You and I have both known him for many years. Recently took on this role with Original X Productions. Very recently, early this year in 2024. And we talk about a number of things. This was an amazing conversation where we got to hear about his career background and his history and his time in the industry and the leadership lessons and the guest experience lessons that he's learned along the way, and then connecting that to what he's doing now with Original X Productions.
One of the things he talks about that I really, really appreciated was trusting your crazy ideas, because I think there's so many people that have crazy ideas, or as you like to say, the big, fat, hairy goals, audacious goals, whatever they are. And I think sometimes we have those ideas, and then immediately our logical brain says, oh, I can't do that, or I don't have the resources, or I don't have the time, or I don't know how to start. And we talk ourselves out of doing some of those things that, while it might sound crazy, like that's how new ideas and new things happen every day, right? Like if you think of your very favorite attraction or your very favorite experience, at some point somebody said, what if we do that? And do something different than we've done in the past. So I love that concept from Nick.
Yeah, and he talked about it first with a story about networking, but then we were able to dovetail that very nicely into things that he does from an employee engagement and leadership development standpoint. So it was great to hear his mindset on that and everything he had to say. We also talked about the need for human connection, which is something that in our industry, in a location-based experience industry, it is about convincing people to get out and do something out of the house with their friends, with their family, spend money, do things that they can't do at home, do things that they can't do for free, and prove to them that the memory that they're going to get when they come do this is better than all of the alternative options that they have.
And one of the overarching topics that we discussed along with that is when they get there, creating a great experience by having your team members being part of the show. And you kind of related to that or mentioned that a little bit earlier in terms of how the team members can truly enhance the experience with their knowledge, with their terminology, with their vocabulary. So all those things really come together to create an experience that people hopefully want to come do and do again and tell their friends, and thus perpetuates the location-based entertainment business.
100%. So, should we put on our wizard robes and move that couch up the stairs?
I think we should pivot from us and on to Nick Miller. Hey, Nick, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. How you doing today?
Doing great. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great. So excited to be able to catch up with you and to learn more about your career and your philosophies. Can we start off kind of talking through where you've been, how you got to where you are, and a little bit about your history?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that I started a career in attractions back when I was like a teenager. This was back when, forums were all the rage and you could learn anything by going on one. And I was following the construction of Superman at Six Flags Great America. And I just like fell in love with the whole attractions and theme parks and all that sort of thing. But really what prompted it was a contest I won at Six Flags Great America when I was 16. They used to put a giant gorilla on top of their observation tower. I don't know if you guys remember this. One year they hosted a contest to name the gorilla, and I won. I named that gorilla Larry. Larry the gorilla. I wrote a poem actually, and Larry fell in love with the giant spider that they used to put on the side of American Eagle, Tiny. Um, and that got me in to meet their PR team for like Fright Fest that year. And I got kind of like behind the scenes access and I got to see how everything worked and work with these professionals just because I'd won this contest. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Like I want to be the guy who helps put on Fright Fest. So after that, I went to school. I was studying marketing and public relations because that's what I wanted to do. Um, I got a job at Cedar Point for a summer while I was in school. And then after that, I never used my marketing or PR degree ever again. I went into operations for Merlin Entertainments, and was able to grow my career with them as a great company. Lots of growth, lots of opportunities in different places all over the world. So it's been a really great run. I love this industry. I love attractions. I love tourism. It is such a cool and dynamic industry that's sort of always changing and always has opportunities for people. So it's been a really, really great, gosh, almost 15, 20 years now.
Well, first of all, we're going to need to see that poem that you wrote about Larry the Gorilla at some point. Maybe we can include that in the show notes if you've got that.
That was pre-Facebook, so good luck finding it. I've actually looked to see if like I had it on like a old floppy disk or something. I don't know where it went.
I no, that's such I mean, it's a funny story. It's a cool story of how I mean, you started out as an enthusiast, and then because of, I would say, like the, I mean, the park really amplified your enthusiasm for the industry as a consumer,
Yeah.
which it was almost like a natural assumption that you would then take it on as a career. I
Hmm.
So, like you said, you've been in the industry 15, 20 years. You've worked at so many different parks, so many different attractions. Most recently, you took on the role of Director of Guest Experience for Original X. So tell us about OGX Productions, and tell us all about what you're doing now.
Yeah, OGX is it's a young company. It really is. And we call ourselves OGX, but it is Original X Productions. But we are really becoming a leader in terms of location-based branded entertainment. The company is a little over a year old, but it was an offshoot from Superfly X, which is one of the companies that started the original Friends experience. So OGX now runs the Friends experience in multiple places around the world. We've also got Harry Potter Magic at Play, the Office experience, and we're actually starting a brand new venture with Hershey this fall that's going to debut in Chicago, which we're really excited about. We're designing that from the ground up along with our partners at Hershey. And we're all about providing just a really immersive, high quality experience with all of these branded partners that we have. And it is a really exciting time to be part of the company. Like I said, it's so new and fresh that you kind of have the opportunity to create these things as a group. And it's a small group of people, very, very like-minded, passionate individuals who want to see the success of this new company.
So Nick, I'm wondering if we can dive into the kind of the nuance of some of the things that you do a little bit, because you talk about these branded experiences and things that people all around the world have heard of and probably love. Friends, Harry Potter, they know them so well.
Mhm.
So what are some of maybe the challenges or opportunities that you have in bringing those to life for your guests?
Yeah, I think that is a really good question because when you're dealing with these brands that everybody loves so much, they know them, right? Like the back of their hand. If you have a Friends super fan come in to see our flagship Friends Experience location in New York City, they have a very high expectation for what they're going to see. They've done their research. They know what the set of the guy's apartment looks like because they've seen the show. They probably watched it 3 or 4 times all the way through. So first and foremost is the design. You got to make sure that the design is going to hit the expectations that our guests have. And that thankfully can come from studio partners. We have great partners for the Friends experience over at Warner Brothers, and they provide us with loads of set design. Yes, one, but also real life props. We have the original script for the Friends show when it was called Six of One. Things that you can't get really anywhere else. And the studio partners are more than happy to work with us to provide the experience that they know is going to hit all the marks for the guests who are coming in to see it, because it's within their best interest for us to be putting on the most immersive event that we can. So on top of the actual like design of the location, it's also really about the staff. I think the staff really can make or break just about any experience. And you guys talk about this all the time on your podcast, but having a staff that has a hospitality mindset is vitally important. And that can come in a couple of different ways. I think staff can be part of the show. Like they can play roles, they can play characters. They can be so into Friends and be a Friends super fan themselves that they're teaching our guests things that they didn't know about the show previously. Or they can be in a Hershey attraction or a Harry Potter attraction and throw around lingo that exists in the world of these brands so that people feel immersed, not just within the set, but also from the vocabulary that's getting thrown at them. And if they're not going to be part of the actual show itself, having the sense of hospitality to greet people into their spaces, have warm smiles on their faces, going above and beyond for people, because at every attraction sometimes things don't go right, either from external forces like weather or transportation or whatever that happens to be, to things that can happen inside the attraction. Making sure that people's expectations not are only met, but when things don't go well, that you're fixing whatever the problems are. And if you can, trying to go like a little above and beyond for those people because they've had something happen to them and they need something to get them back on track, essentially. Let them know that, okay, it's not your fault. It's no problem. We can fix this. We can fix that. And hey, while we're at it, here's a coffee or here's a water bottle or something like that. So that they know that we care. So the staff is vitally important to make these experiences work the way that they're intended to. If we don't have an engaged and on staff, it doesn't matter how good you make a set look or how cool and interactive it is.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I think we're all, like I said, like drinking from the same fountain here. Totally agree with with everything that you said there. I'm actually curious, kind of connecting the dots between your previous career experiences and now, because you are no stranger to working with IP before you,
Mhm.
Lego, Peppa Pig, and even just knowing that you live in Central Florida, you've probably experienced Harry Potter to some
Yeah,
extent. I'm
yeah.
just gonna guess and make an assumption on that. So curious as far as how you sort of bring that in and your prior knowledge and how that's been able to impact your role.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think working with IP before, like Lego, I was working with Lego for many, many years. You have an understanding sometimes of what a brand is looking for in terms of their location-based entertainment and how we can be a great partner for them, and also how they can be a great partner for us. And that's all about communication. Um, Having the experience of doing it before is helpful because when you're coming into a new brand partner, you already have a sense of understanding of what they're generally looking for. You can ask easy questions like, how fast is turnaround time, and what do you need from us to get this sort of thing approved and over the line. And you just have the right expectation. Now, what's different about working with the brands at OGX is that previously working with Lego and working with a huge company like Merlin Entertainments, you know there's people whose job it is just to communicate with the brands. And when you're at a smaller company, we're having FaceTime all the time with brand partners, and it's really exciting because you have the opportunity to throw out different ideas that might work, and it's a real collaboration. And that has, I guess, something that selfishly I get really excited about, because you get a little bit of an opportunity to put more fingerprints on designs and also different ways to operate. With the assumptions that brand partners may have had previously. After having conversations, sometimes we can come up with even better ideas together. So I think that it's been helpful having the prior experience with other brands and other roles, but this is a little bit of a different ballgame.
So speaking of a different ball game, when you were at Legoland, you had your teams right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were on site with all the people that you were with. I'm guessing. Now you're largely remote, I would imagine, and your teams are all over the place. So how do you manage from afar, if you will?
Uh, Full honesty, still working on it. It is. It's so much different, and honestly, it was something that concerned me when I was making that leap because I remember when COVID was happening at Legoland and the challenges that everybody had in communicating with one another because we were all used to being with each other 5, 6 days a week, and now suddenly we weren't, and that void really did take a toll on how we communicated, what got communicated, because sometimes things didn't. Certain things did get communicated around the water cooler. That's absolutely true, or after work or something like that. So that was a concern that I had. I'm getting into a groove now. I think regular strong communication practices that you have in person, like setting regular meetings with each other, so that no matter what happens during the week, you always have time. Like those things still work in a remote world. But making the most out of site visits when I am able to do those is really important so that you can start building that trust and that relationship. Because I think that's what people can lose when it's just over the camera. Um, you're on for an hour, right? But you're in a professional meeting setting when you're doing Zoom calls. I think you really get to know people while you're eating lunch together or while you're chatting for 15 minutes after a meeting is over because you both just happen to stay in the same room at the same time.
Mhm.
Those moments are harder to come by when it's a remote type of management. So that is something that I am still very conscious of and still trying to work on because it's one thing to already have relationships with people and then not see them and only work from afar. It's a different thing to start in an entirely new organization like that. Um, so it's something that you just continue to work on and find best practices and talk to other people and keep learning, which is what we do in attractions all the time. We always adapt and learn. Things always change in our industry.
Mhm. Nick, I wonder if we could go deeper into the people side of the business
Mhm.
and kind of connecting back to one of the things you mentioned earlier of the staff can make or break the experience. And I was particularly interested by you talking about how the staff can be part of the show and really kind of embrace it, whether it is a character that lives in that universe or at least being able to deliver that to the guest. And wondering how you really foster that culture, whether it's kind of from the employee experience life cycle, even in hiring and recruiting, but also from the training side of it and really managing it and encouraging people to have that type of mindset and mentality.
Yeah, I think the first thing, Josh, is just like setting the expectation right away with people. And that really means on the very first day or during the job interview process. Um, Especially if you're looking for people to become part of the show, because there can be a very fine line between like being an actor or an entertainer within our space and filling in show moments by understanding yourself as a character in the world in which you are representing. And there's no doubt that parks in Central Florida can do this really, really well in highly themed spaces like um, Star Wars at Hollywood Studios or Harry Potter at Universal. So frequently, the staff members who are walking around those worlds understand that they're in those worlds and they're going to speak like somebody who lives in Batu or somebody who goes to Gringotts, and they know some characters that they're able to reference, or they're going to say something that really wouldn't make sense on Earth, but would make sense on whatever planet that we're currently on. And if you give people the tools during the training to have 10 or 15 of those lines or those quirks always in the back of their heads, they can still provide excellent service and still get people to the bathroom or still get people their sandwich or whatever that happens to be, but still add in a little bit of magic while they're doing it. And that is the kind of thing that requires a certain level of recruitment to find the right people. Maybe those who are becoming aspiring actors and are training to become professionals in that field. People who did theater a lot during high school or in college, and they just love doing that, so they want to be part of a character within our attractions. Um, and then ensuring that you're giving them the tools to properly do it. And that requires certain amount of training. It requires shadowing. You don't just throw somebody in for the first time without anyone watching them. You want to make sure that they're saying the right things that make sense with the brand that you're representing. But I think this is a space that us as attraction operators have a lot of room to grow in because IP, I think, is certainly here to stay. It is where a ton of investment is happening all across our industry. And if you're going to be fully immersed, the people who you're interacting with have to be part of that story too.
Hmm. So Nick, you're talking about, how the team members can really enhance the experience, and certainly we can see that as an opportunity, to take the guest experience to the next level, right?
Mhm.
But I'm also curious because you've been in the industry for so long and you've had so many varied experiences. What are you seeing as some of the bigger challenges that we're facing, like for the attractions and tourism industry?
Man, industry as a whole, that's a really good question. I normally think of the challenges that face the entire industry as also the opportunities that the industry can eventually exploit, if that makes sense. Um, and I think that technology is probably both of those things. It is a challenge and it's an opportunity. And I'm just going to grab my phone, right? Because we're all on these things all the time. I see I see my screen time every Sunday morning, and I just poke myself every time I see it because I'm like, seriously, that many hours? Um, and people, while they are using their phones and their devices, I think to feel interconnected with one another, because that is something that all humans crave. One of my mentors from over the years say that there's five things that every human needs to feel fulfilled, and connection is the last one. And
Mm.
I think we use these phones to try to feel connected as many times as we possibly can, but that feeling is short and it's fleeting because it's not in person. It isn't being able to look at somebody face to face, it's passive. So while humans are spending more and more time on their devices and using technology, they still have a craving for real connection and real experiences and something that is going to transport them out of the everyday and allow them to suspend their disbelief somewhere else. And that's where attractions can come in. But it also creates an expectation that technology is going to be embedded. You can't just pretend like your phone doesn't exist when you're inside one of the attractions. It has become part of us. It has come with us everywhere we go. And I think when we forget our phones at home, we like have little moments, right? I don't know if you guys do. I have moments where I'm like, oh my God, something must be on fire because I don't have my phone. Um, so, how do attractions exploit the human need for connection by getting them out of the house and out of their phones, which, when you think about it, is very low cost and frequently free, to spend money to create memories that are going to become much bigger and much more important than anything they could do on their devices. So I think that that is the biggest challenge that we face right now is convincing people that we still do it best, and your time is best spent with us and with your friends and family because it's something that you're not going to regret doing. It's something that you're going to remember for a very long time.
Hmm.
That is something uh, that I think about a lot and have thought about for for a long time, and even talk about saying, does anybody need to visit your attraction and look at all the alternatives that you have? We have limitless possibilities for how to spend our time, how to connect, how to engage, how to connect.
Mhm.
It's become even more prevalent since I became a parent, and it is so easy to walk down the street to our playground and spend an hour there, right? Than it is to go to the zoo, go to the aquarium, go to an attraction or something like that. Even though there is, a differential, there is like okay, there's the engagement, there's the connection. There are much stronger memories created at those locations. What do you see as perhaps really those opportunities, or you said kind of chances to exploit that challenge to be able to, I would say, really turn that challenge into an opportunity that ideally solves that need for connection, that makes it a no-brainer that we're going to go pay for an experience somewhere than go somewhere for free.
Right. I mean, You can look up almost any attraction on YouTube today and get a full POV of it. I imagine that both of you would say though that that is nothing compared to experiencing it in person with your friends, and that's because of the emotional connection that people have when I think when they experience these things and when they go visit these things with their loved ones. Um, uh, okay, I'm gonna become roller coaster dorky right here, so warning. Um,
Good company.
I, yeah, I'm going on a trip to a new theme park next week, and I'm really excited about it. Normally, I don't watch POVs of roller coasters before I go on them because I want to be surprised and I want to like get it all the first time. But I accidentally watched one of them when this new ride came out a couple of months ago, um, and I remember looking at it and being like, "Oh, this looks pretty cool," but I'm not sure. I'm a little worried now that maybe it's not going to hit my expectation. But everyone I know who has been over there and has ridden that ride has come back and said that is one of the best rides. So there it's clear to me that them going to that park and riding it specifically has created a much more powerful experience and memory than you could ever get by watching a video of it on YouTube, even though it is in fact the same thing that your eyes are seeing and even your ears are hearing. You don't have the same ability to connect with it emotionally when you don't get to use all your senses and experience it with your friends.
I think I'll dork out now a little bit as well. I think there's that visceral feeling of the G forces also, the
Totally.
wind in your hair and all the things that happen to your body as you're, being thrown through space on one of these contraptions that I think also lends itself to a more memorable experience than just simply watching something on YouTube. I find it really interesting when I read comments about people that have watched something on, YouTube or wherever, and they say, well, that doesn't look that intense. That would never be a great ride, but like get on it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was just at Dollywood and we rode their new mountain coaster, Black
Yeah.
Bear Mountain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to look at it, doesn't look like much. But man, you get on that thing, it's got some G's, it's got some acceleration. It's a fun ride. And
Absolutely.
so you can't, I guess what I'm saying is you can't judge a roller coaster by its YouTube video, just like you can't judge a book by its cover, right? So maybe there's a question in here too about the attractions that you're now leading in terms of, hey, I've seen friends on TV. I must know what the experience is like, but I probably don't because I've never been on the couch or I've never, sat in Central Perk or
Yes.
whatever it is. So part of that, maybe this even gets back to some of your marketing experience that you said you're not using anymore, but maybe you're using it more than you think. Like getting people to understand that that's part of the anticipation and the experience that is going to create the memory later on.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, going and trying to move the couch up the stairs and screaming pivot with all of your friends cannot be replicated anywhere else. Like that only happens in one spot. And when we go back to talking about the staff and how they make that happen, the photographer who's leading that experience is the one that makes that happen. If you just go with three of your friends and you look at this couch and you just look at each other and you're like, well, what do I do? You have to have somebody who's there, who's excited, who's going to put you in the right place to make the right memory and lead you everyone to do something that they wouldn't normally do. You make sure that they're going into poses that are going to be funny, that they didn't probably think of themselves because we've got like five or six different ways that you can do this. And some of them include, barely touching the couch at all and just like pretending that you're asleep. Like there's limitless possibilities that allow us to do it essentially better than anything you can do by yourself at home. So you're absolutely right. We have to make sure that we talk about that in the marketing and get people excited to come and be part of the pivot scene, but then also surprise them when they get up to Central Perk and that they actually have the opportunity to get a coffee inside Central Perk. That's pretty cool. That's not something that you can do in a lot of places. So, and that's a nice surprise and delight that people can experience at the end of their visit.
Nick, I've got kind of maybe a logistical question here, and maybe I really trying to like fully understand the experience. Being that they rotate, they tour locations. Would you compare this to, say, an exhibit in a museum that's in a rotating space, a dinosaur exhibit, or even branded with certain IP? Is it somewhat similar, but logistically, operationally, etc.?
Yeah, it has similarities. So we have touring models that are not going to be exactly the same as flagship locations. So, for example, the Friends Experience in New York City, that's a flagship location. It is permanent. All the walls are permanent. The scenic goes all the way up to the ceiling. Permanent lighting fixtures. Yeah, a much different experience than, say, the Friends Experience in Boston, which is designed and is engineered to be able to be picked up and brought into another city. I will say that the sets in Boston and New York are just as immersive. Like they both hit the same marks as one another. The real difference is the transition areas in between. We have to build walls that aren't going to be permanent, that are going to be able to fit into several different spaces. So the layouts change depending on the city that you're in and depending on the building that you're in. Obviously, we need to make sure that the fire marshals are going to be happy when we're going into a space and we're building something that is going to have different exits and things along those lines. So there are logistical hurdles that have to be overcome with every single location that we tour to. But that is, just kind of part of the challenge and is sort of what makes it fun a little bit. The feeling that you get opening a new attraction, and you guys have both done this in your careers, is a really, really great feeling. And OGX is able to open up new attractions at a very fast pace, and that is an exciting piece of our careers. And the same goes for the venue managers who are on site and the staff members who we hire to create those experiences and make them come to life. It's exciting for all of us.
Well, Nick, now you have me wanting to carry a couch up a set of stairs. But I'm wondering if we can pivot just a little bit in
Mm-hmm.
our conversation.
Ah,
And I want to ask you about something that I saw you do a couple of years ago at the Florida Attractions Association conference, which was an amazing icebreaker at a networking event. And I wonder if you could kind of talk through what it was and then what the origin story was and where that came from.
yeah, you're talking about the minifigure thing, aren't you?
I am.
Okay, I swear I didn't plan this. I just still have minifigures all over the place. So you get when you work in Legoland attractions for several years, you just have Lego bricks and minifigures coming out of your ears. And that year was my first Florida Attractions Association conference. I was nominated to go and represent Legoland. And to be honest with you, Matt, this is when I was just first getting confident with networking events. Um, Going to networking events like in internal pathways, like within the companies who you work for, that I've always felt really comfortable with. But external, when you're the only person there that that can be really intimidating. But I happen to have like 3 boxes of minifigs in my office the week before the conference, and it was from COVID reopening. We had tons of minifigures that we had left over because we couldn't even do minifigure trading back then. You couldn't be touching things and giving them to each other. So we had all these leftover minifigures, and I thought, you know what? Those can't be sold anymore. That's 2 years old at this point. Let's just fill up a giant head with minifigures and bring them with, and just introduce myself by giving people random minifigures. Let's see what happens there. So that is the origin story. It just happened to be something I had extra, and I thought people would appreciate it, and hopefully it would help make introducing myself to 100 people I didn't know a little bit easier. And it did. It totally did that. People were obviously very receptive and very nice. And throughout the conference, you kind of get known as the person who did that on the first day. And it didn't end up being who I was forever with FAA, but it was certainly a good start. And it was just a out of the box idea. And, I have a saying, it's called trust your crazy ideas. It's something that I've held very close to me for since college, and I just went with it.
Any other crazy ideas that career-wise or personal-wise that are worth sharing that turned to be success stories that clearly for Matt, this was very memorable that you did that with the minifigs.
100%.
I think that in terms of like staff development and leadership development, it's also a good idea to trust your crazy ideas every once in a while. Um, the amount of people who end up running theme parks and location-based attractions and FECs, so many of them ended up starting their careers by like selling popcorn or working in the parking lot or taking tickets. And kind of found themselves falling in love with their work and moving up themselves. However, there's other people who kind of get spotted by others. And one of the greatest things that we get to do, I think, as leaders in attractions is we get to spot the next generation of leaders while we are, still the leaders within our organizations. So thinking outside the box and trusting your crazy ideas can be bringing in a whole bunch of frontline staff members who aren't leads yet or aren't supervisors yet, and giving them half a day of leadership development and teaching them what it would be like to be a lead, or maybe saying, hey, is this something you're ever interested in? Okay, you're not going to operate the roller coaster today. You're going to shadow the person who's in charge of the roller coasters today, and giving them an opportunity to be able to learn something new and maybe open their eyes a little bit that this isn't just a summer job. This is a potential career. This is something that I could keep doing. I could keep learning and growing. And in fact, there's probably a pretty easy step ladder for me to see that other people have gone on. That's our opportunity, I think, as leaders within our space. So thinking outside the box with getting people involved and excited in what they do, but also the potential that they could pursue as their own career is another really good opportunity for us.
I love that thought of kind of gathering some of those frontline team members and giving them an opportunity to see what a leadership role might look like, right? Or,
Yeah.
even working in another department in the organization, because I think one of the things that I see is people that get even good at what they're doing, but they don't see outside of kind of their roller coaster or their game or their food
Mm-hmm.
stand. And when you do expand that knowledge, it can be very beneficial to how you even operate your own location. But I'm curious, Nick, when you're kind of looking for those team members that might be ready to step up or wanting to step up, what are some of the qualities that you look for or that kind of catch your eye in those folks?
I think you're looking for people who are generally proactive in nature. I think you're looking for people who have shown that they are willing and interested to grow. Um, I have a kind of rule, and the rule is if somebody internally applies for a role, they should always get an interview, even if you know that they're not qualified for it yet. And that is just to A, give them practice so that next time when they've got a little more experience, they're going to do well. But also B, learn and find out what their career interests are. That is a great opportunity for you to have a first time career conversation with somebody and ask them what they love about their job and what they want to do more of. Because then you can really help unlock things for them if they are willing to throw their name out there. The last thing, I guess, is making a space safe enough to allow people to throw their names out there in the first place.
Hmm.
Because if somebody doesn't feel safe enough or they're not self-confident enough or they say, oh, there's no way I could do that job, I've only been doing my role for 9 months. If nobody corrects them, if nobody allows them to be able to take a chance, then they could really find themselves creating their own truth. They could find themselves, saying that I have to wait 5 years until I try for a promotion, and making that reality for themselves. So we have to make sure that we also create enough programs and enough chances and opportunities for people to throw their name out in the hat, and feel like they're able to do so.
Hmm.
I'd like to ask kind of the flip side of that question, and you answered it a little bit, but curious as far as advice that you would have for up and coming leaders in the attractions industry.
Yes, do everything. And that is a very broad statement, but hear me out. There are not a lot of roles within our industry that you just go to college for and now you're suddenly qualified to do that. We live in a very niche industry, and it's one where you generally need to learn on the job or you need to be trained by somebody who already knows how to do it. Even when you think about, the maintenance of rides, um, you can't go to a lot of places and get training on how to maintain a roller coaster unless you are at the theme park being trained how to maintain the roller coaster. Um, and because of that, there's frequently opportunities that attractions of all sizes end up giving to frontline staff members because there's certain things that just require a lot of help. Let's say, for example, a seasonal theme park is coming into its season and it's asking for people to return. And then, after the returners come in, they still need another 400 people to open. Matt, tell me if I'm wrong here, but there's probably times where HR throws up a flag and says, "Hi, we need interviewers. We need lots of interviewers because we're going to host this huge hiring event and we're going to try to hire 150 people. So we need 50 people to do interviews." You're probably training people to interview others for the very first time, but you're asking for hand raisers. When you have the opportunity to raise your hand, whether it's learning how to interview someone, whether it's learning how to fix a machine that exists in your facility, I'm not, I can say this now because I don't work there anymore. I once rode in the back of a box truck with 43 wax figures, very, very slowly, health and safety, a long time ago, to a PR shoot because they needed somebody to help. And those are all extras, right? They're things on top of your day job. But if you have opportunities to do that, say yes, because if it ends up being horrible and you hate it, that's just one day of your life. But more than likely, you're going to network with somebody new in your organization that you don't work with every day, and it's going to end up opening doors for you. Even if it's not in the actual thing that you're doing in that moment, maybe you don't become a member of the public relations team, but I've seen countless people become spokespeople for attractions because they helped out with a PR event and they wanted to give it a try and they got some media training because they know the person in public relations now and now they get to try to be on TV. That I think is my biggest piece of advice for anyone who's up and coming is just to always raise your hand and say yes.
I think the through line to a lot of the things you've been talking about, Nick, is being proactive, right?
Hmm.
So you're looking for people who are proactive. Don't be afraid to be proactive. And you also used the word confidence a little earlier. And I think that's something that those two things feed off of each other, right? The more you're proactive and you step outside your comfort zone, the more confidence you get. The more confidence you get, the more willing to step outside your comfort zone and do all those things. So I love that perspective.
And I just want to say something real quick about confidence because it's a line that somebody told me a couple of years ago that just in my mind clicked. Because sometimes I struggle with self-confidence. I think everybody does. Um, the individual said, the only time you're not confident is when you realize you're not confident. Our regular state of being as human beings is one of confidence. And the example that he gave me is if I went into my garage right now and turned on the car and drove to Orlando, I wouldn't even think twice about it. That's no big deal. Like we do that all the time. The first couple of times I got behind the wheel and tried to go on the freeway, I was terrified. Even to turn on the car, I had no confidence in the way that I was going to be able to operate that vehicle. But that was only a moment in time. So normally I'm extremely confident while I drive today, but that's just because I've gotten practice and I've gotten myself into a comfort zone by working on it over and over again. So whenever we have these moments where we don't have self-confidence, it is only a moment and it will pass. And if you get yourself into that uncomfortable mindset and try it in a safe way, of course, not trying to tell people to go out in like the middle of a lightning storm or something. Um, you're going to build your confidence just by becoming more familiar with whatever it is that's not making you confident. And the same thing went with networking events, Matt. Honestly, I just for years hated them, avoided them, did not try very hard until something sort of clicked and you became just more confident because you do the minifigure thing once and it works out really well. And suddenly you realize, okay, maybe strangers don't hate me. It's just that networking events are sometimes awkward and you just do your best.
That is such good advice. The only time you're not confident is when you realize you're not confident. That was like a brain exploding moment that I just had right there, just hearing you say that. So I
Yes.
really appreciate you saying that and sharing all of that with us. Nick, this has been such a fascinating, very wide-ranging and really interesting conversation here. As we start to wind this down here, if people want to learn more about Original X Production or get a hold of you directly, where would you send them?
Absolutely. I'm always open to connect on LinkedIn. Just search for Nick Miller. There's 8,000 of us on LinkedIn. But if you throw in Original X Productions or Legoland or something like that, you'll probably find me. I love to connect with individuals from all over the industry. You can also send me an email, nick.miller@ogxproductions.com. I am always willing to chat and talk with people who are in the industry, up and coming in the industry, want to know more about working in the industry. I think one of the best things, like I was saying before, we can do is help the next generation fulfill their goals.
Absolutely. Nick, so we are winding down, but I have one last question for you, and it relates back to what got you into the industry in the first place. Why Larry for the name of the gorilla?
The same thing down.
I have no idea. Like I was 16, Matt. I probably thought it sounded silly.
Why do you think it was chosen?
I don't know. I don't think that PR person worked at Six Flags much longer after they picked it. Let's just say Larry existed for a couple years in Six Flags lore, and then it slowly got retired after that. Now you don't see the gorilla anymore. He doesn't come out anymore, unfortunately.
No, no. Well, I don't think it's because of his name. I think we'll say that was because of other reasons he retired. But Nick, like Josh said, this has been an amazing conversation, and we can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us today. And for everybody out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros.